pleasure to welcome Dr. Khalid Sohail. Dr. Sohail. Thank you, Bill. I think for me it's very heartwarming because usually people with our thinking are in minority, we are sort of the outsiders. So when you have so many people around you, so I think it's sort of a great pleasure for a person like me to. So I think people who have arranged all this, all the organizations, Bill, Kathy, I think Christopher DiCarlo was one of the vehicles of me connecting. So I really feel sort of very touched by their hospitality and I think feeling at home. I was talking to some of the people, when you're always feeling the outsider, so when you feel with the people around you. I think I'm sort of aware that talking to people who are not of that mindset is different than talking to people who are of the same mindset. So in a way, it is learning, sort of a dialogue with you people, or being with you people. And many of you know more than me, have more experiences, have many struggles. So I'll sort of share with you some of my personal reflections and my personal struggles, because something that helped me be a free thinker was to go to some conferences where other people speak and I can relate to them. When there is affirmation, then I feel that I'm not. You see, when you are thinking like this, you feel outsider, you feel eccentric, you feel abnormal, you feel what's wrong with me, the people around me are not relating to me. And I think psychologically, I as a psychotherapist feel that feeling of connection, that feeling of being kin, that feeling on the same page, that feeling on the same wavelength has been very crucial to me. So I want today to share some of my struggles, personal struggles, philosophical struggles, social struggles with you, so that see if you could sort of relate to some of them and might affirm to you people. So I brought some of the sort of these highlights sort of to connect with certain points, and I am hoping that you will sort of connect the dots sort of for yourself. I think a point, I'm sure with all of you, a point comes in one's life, that came in my life, where I felt, am I comfortable to go public with it? And I think, being from a Muslim background, brought up in that kind of environment, I grew up just on the border of Pakistan and Afghanistan. I grew up with those people that I knew as Taliban, but the world didn't know. That word was not that familiar. I grew up with them as a child, as a teenager, in the university, in the college. So I was sort of in that environment. So you can see my journey from there to here. So in 2001, the first book that I think that Bill mentioned, From Islam to Secular Humanism, when I wrote the manuscript, I shared with some of the publishers. Some of them warned me it's not very wise. And I went back to reflect. Am I ready to take that step? Because that truth, my truth that I wanted to share with the world, am I comfortable to see where it goes, where it lands? It's like jumping in the unknown. It's like jumping off the cliff into the deep ocean and the deep end of the sea, knowing, can I swim? Can I do this? And it was a very sort of a soul-searching reflection. And to be honest with you, I felt clear, I felt honest, I felt okay with my conscience. I was clear. I was clear from the sense that I am sharing my truth, and I'm not writing a single word intentionally to hurt anyone, to offend anyone. It is not against any other ideology or philosophy. I felt it was my right as a human being, a right as a humanist, right as an atheist, as a free thinker, to share. This is what I believe. This I went through because other people's journeys that helped me, maybe my journey would help others. So 2001, it was just a coincidence that 9/11, the Michael Cohen had called me from the show to interview me, and this 9/11 incident happened. They called me back. They said, we can't interview you that day. Can we postpone for a week? I said, I'm fine. Now the 9/11 incident happens and this book comes out. And then you could see I'm on the show and I share my thoughts honestly, and I go home, and the first phone call, I live in Whitby outside Toronto, I got a call from one of my friends from Hamilton. He said, you publicly said it. Because what happened, Michael asked me, he says, what is your thoughts? Are you a Muslim? I said, my parents are Muslims. Are you a Muslim? No, I'm not a Muslim. So they're saying I'm not a Muslim. Now in that context, in that social, cultural, religious context, that's saying you are publicly acknowledging that I was a believer, I'm not a believer. So what happens after that, you don't know. So he was warning me, but I felt okay. So what happened? It's not only that two other books came out, two groups of people started contacting me. The Muslims living in Ontario, in Pickering, Ajax, Toronto, Mississauga, in that area, they started calling me, inviting me to their homes. Some people even warned me, why are you going to their homes? Maybe it's dangerous enough. I didn't feel that. I never felt, and I don't know why, I never felt that fear. My sweetheart, Betty Davis, sometimes says, you know, do you have a death wish where you go? I said, no, I don't have a death wish. I feel comfortable. For some reason, I feel comfortable and I can't explain it to you. So I go to the Pickering, there is a family, and they invite me for the dinner. She had read the book, From Islam to Secular Humanism. She says to me, Dr. Sohail, I'm a Muslim, I'm a believer, I pray, I fast, I follow all of that. I read your book and I'm very glad. I did not feel offended, I didn't feel insulted, although I'm a believer, so I wanted to welcome you in my home. Her husband said to her in front of me, he said, you know, we've been married for 11 years. We have 4 children. You always ask me, how did I become a socialist? How did I become a free thinker? I'm not a writer. Dr. Sohail wrote the story. This is 90% my story, although the details might be different. I may not have brought up. And it was amazing that 1 person, 2 people, 10 people, 20 people, 50 people, these people in their living rooms, and they're still in Ontario, they're still in Canada, in their living rooms, they would say to me, Dr. Sohail, I think I agree with you. I have the same values, I have the same thoughts, I have the same ideals, but I cannot go public with that. I cannot say it publicly. So even when we say 20% or 24% Canada, there are far more, especially from the Muslim background, they will not publicly say. So they felt that curious, what would happen to me? You know, because they were checking out the social temperature, you know. And so that was in a way heartwarming for me. We started a group, it's now called Family of the Heart. We did not want to give it any openly secular, atheistic kind of a thing. It is more of a secular humanist organization. We started with 10 people. We would meet in somebody's home at a dinner. You know, one of my friends, we tease him. You know, he's an atheist, a very dedicated atheist. His home, we call it the Makkah of the atheist. We collect at his house. His wife is very religious. She is a practicing Muslim, but she's very open-hearted, very warm, very caring. She welcomes us, cooks dinner, we sit down, we chat. From the home, we felt comfortable to go to a restaurant. We will have this sort of a buffet, everybody will pay $10, $12 and we'll get together. I wanted to open up a dialogue. I felt that in our Muslim community, dialogue was missing. There was lack of tolerance. We cannot understand, we do not even want to talk to people who do not agree with us. So just to promote the dialogue, come the right or the left. So we invite religious people also, but they have to be open. They present their religious speech or their whatever, but they have to be open to have a dialogue with the free thinkers. From 10 people in 2003 that we started, now on our internet, our website, we have about 7,000 members on the internet of the Family of the Heart. That just gives you an idea. Most of them still are not willing to come public, but we had seminars in Toronto. We pushed the envelope. We had one seminar, Can We Say Goodbye to God? And we were surprised in Toronto, in North York Library, 150 people showed up. Some of them were believers, some of them were not, but they were open to talk to us. And I felt very comfortable, very excited about that process, that how people, their children, their spouses, you know. And then I found out that I asked them, why you don't want to come public? So you will be surprised with the type of responses. One says, I have a young daughter, I want to get her married off. If they find out that her father is an atheist, they will not marry her. That's a very personal struggle. I give you another example. After that book came out, a doctor from South Africa called me and he said, I want to talk to you. We went out for dinner. He said, my wife is from Pakistan, she's very religious. I'm a closet atheist, my wife doesn't know. Now our son is a teenager. She wants me to be the role model. She wants me to go to the mosque every Friday to pray so that our son becomes a good Muslim. And he said, I'm struggling with that. What do I do with that? I want to share with you that as far as a political struggle, and I am very supportive of it, the media and all that, that is very powerful. That personal struggle, that see as a psychotherapist, that battle with your friend, with your relatives, even with your spouse, it is like I call it coming out. I see many patients who are like bisexual or alternative sexual orientation. Their wives don't know that they are gay. Their wives don't know that, they have children. The children don't know who they actually are. My good friend, to give you another real example before I go further, my good friend who was an atheist, went to Pakistan. He was living in New Jersey, fell in love with this woman, very charming young lady, married her, brought her to New York. I called him, I said, why don't you bring her here? We should come to Whitby, join us, we should have a weekend together. He and his wife show up in Whitby. I offer them dinner, and she says, is this food halal? So because I don't observe halal, so I felt kind of not embarrassed, but sort of I was not a good host. I said, I'll make an omelette for you. Tomorrow we'll go to Gerrard Street. Over there you can have some halal food. So she was okay, very graceful about it. I take her to Gerrard Street. We sit down. By this time she was comfortable that I was respectful of her religious values, although I'm not practicing it. She felt comfortable to say to me, Sohail, now you're just my husband's good friend. I'm feeling comfortable with you. I want to share the good news that I'm pregnant. I said, congratulations. And then she says, pray that it will be a girl. And I said, I've never met any Pakistani woman who will wish to be a girl. I said, why is that? She says, my husband is an atheist. He does not believe in circumcision. And if he had a son, then I would like him to be circumcised, and he wouldn't. So it was an awkward moment, you see, that I didn't think that atheism could cause that kind of an issue. So I even suggested to him as a doctor, I said, many doctors who are not believers still believe in circumcision for medical reasons. He had very strong feelings about that. So anyhow, they go back to New Jersey. The baby is born. It's a boy. He's not circumcised. After about 6 weeks, her family, her aunts and uncles come and visit them. My friend goes to buy naan, some bread. In the meantime, they look at the baby and then they find out that the baby is not circumcised. They say to her, sweetheart, how come your son is not circumcised? You are a Muslim. She says, my husband is an atheist. He doesn't believe in it. They tell her, do you respect God more or you respect your husband? This marriage is not good. You are married to this atheist. If we knew he was an atheist, we would not have married you. By the time he brings the food home, there is almost at the verge of this divorce, but she's insisting, I love him, he is the father of my child. So he had to take that stand, that listen, I welcome you and, offer you dinner, but please do not create this marital conflict. So they left and they were not very happy. I'm just sharing with you these ideas that these are very real personal family issues that my friends or the people of our thinking face, and we have to deal with that stuff. So this is just to give you an influence that since 2001, my 2 other books came out. I feel very comfortable, very confident. The people invite me, I feel very humbled by their love and affection and opening the dialogue. By nature, I'm more gentler, so I don't feel that comfortable with very strong confrontative thing. Maybe the psychotherapist in me, I like the dialogue, so I play gentle. If I feel the person is too much offended, I back off so that I have another chance. And I've seen people, these 7,000 people on the internet, they write and call, and I used to welcome their, their dialogues and share that message in a gentler, softer tone so that it is more palatable. So I add the tabasco, I add a little bit of yogurt but that's my style, Now, I think I wanted to go a bit further with you. When this conference started, I was invited. I thought, okay, imagine no religion. So obviously these organized religions are an issue that we are struggling with, we are dealing with. So what I feel are the obstacles to go to that goal, that imagine no religion. How do we get there? What is the obstacle? For me, the biggest obstacle that I perceive at a personal level, at a political level, a social level, but what I call as a religious conditioning. The religious education, the indoctrination. The indoctrination is so strong, and it is very psychological. It's not even rational. It is so deep-rooted in the unconscious, this conditioning, this indoctrination, that the child, by the time is 10 or 12, he or she has absorbed it. And that values are so strong that you could see, just as a general, you don't need any real statistics, that most children of Christians would not only live but die as Christians. Most children of Jews will die as Jews. Most children of Muslims will die as Muslims. Most people of Hindus will. So the religious indoctrination is so deep, so entrenched, so ingrained, so absorbed, so internalized that it becomes part of it. So what does happen? How does this work? I, as a psychologist, psychotherapist, ask myself, how does this indoctrination work mentally, psychologically, emotionally? I've come up with 4 areas. I've not read it in a book. This is just my own thoughts. Because you see these big sort of, buildings that we see, mosques or any church or any organization, how that is the symbols of those. The first one I feel is the intellectual. There's 4 parts that I figured it out for myself. The first part is the intellectual, so intellectually the child is given this blind faith. You accept it. It is sacred. It is holy. Holy, believing in heavenly God, a belief in prophets, a belief in scriptures, a belief in life after death, a belief in miracles. You just accept it because grandmother, grandfather, your ancestors believe in it. Just accept it. Don't question it. Just take it. This is good for you. This is good for your spiritual health. It will make you a better person. You will go to heaven. So all that intellectual part is taken by the child, and by the time before he becomes a teenager, he has absorbed that very deep, and it's very hard for him to get rid of that intellectual sort of a thing. Then it goes a step further. It is not only intellectual, it is also emotional. The emotional is that there is a concept of sin, and there's a concept of guilt. So if you break the law, if you break this rule, if you do not follow the road, the path of your ancestors, then you are sinning. Then you have to feel the guilt, and then you will burn in hell. That is a very deep-rooted sort of a thought, feeling. It sort of touches you to the core. And especially it is shown in the element, in the part of life that is the sexual, the intimate part. The part of life that is supposed to be loved, that should be cherished, that should be enjoyed, that should be our most intimate part, is connected. Sex and love is connected with sin, with guilt. So that is very deep down. And those of you who are therapists, you can see the anxiety, the depression, the marital problem, and many things that are not comfortable. They're not comfortable to share this love and affection in a certain way. You see, in the Catholic, they say only in a missionary position, inside this institution of marriage, in a certain way, in a certain form you can express it. It's sort of restricted. Masturbation becomes self-abuse rather than self-pleasuring. It is very deep-rooted. It's very core of the person's personality, of their character, that it is ingrained. Now up to this far, the intellectual and the emotional is personal. You can say, okay, this affects the person. It goes a step further. The third part that I feel is the social. It is this thought that this group, our group, we have the total authority, we have the ultimate truth. This is the reality, this is the truth. And all the other people from other sects are wrong, they are bad, they are misguided, so this discrimination, I am the only right way of thinking, all the others are wrong. That discrimination, I felt. So to me, I'm still saying that I experienced that growing up there. The intellectual, I believed all that I said to you. Emotionally, I felt very guilty and very sort of uncomfortable about my own self. Accepting one's body, one's own personal body becomes an issue. And then this discrimination, it is so serious, it spills over not to the social. In Pakistan, you could see every day, you see that. It is inside. They are not only fighting, although they are against atheists and all that, but inside also. Shiites say that we are the right one, not the Sunnis. We are the right ones, not the Ahmadis. So we, even Christians, so all the minorities, the religious minorities become the outsider. So if you are weak, you keep quiet. If you're strong, if the fundamentalist vigor is strong, then you go. You take that role. You go on the offensive. Then you want to preach. You not only want to preach, you want to convert. And you don't want to convert in a sort of a normal, healthy, affectionate way. You want to use the force. So you see, it was heartbreaking. My friends in medical school who are from the Ahmadi group, their doorsteps were covered with garbage. Just imagine how humiliating is somebody coming to you and putting all this garbage on your doorstep just because you have a different faith or way of thinking or way of lifestyle. Then finally, I think that you people see in the newspaper is declaring this the political part, the holy war, it's the crusade or the jihad, that finally at a mob level, at a massive level, you go and you declare your ideology, your faith as the only right faith, and you feel you are given this message or this role by God or your scriptures to go and spread the word, and at whatever cost, by hook and by crook. Now I'm going to make a confession here that because I grew up there, and age 13 in 1965 there was a war with India, and in Pakistan it was declared that it's a holy war against Kafirs, against Hindus, and we should go and fight. I was a teenager, I was fascinated by this whole thing. I remember a pilot, his name was M.M. Alam. He was so good a pilot, a bomber. He went there and in 56 seconds he hit 6 planes of Indian army. He was the hero, and I wanted to be like him. I wanted to become a pilot, wanted to become a hero, wanted to join this. Now I feel obviously embarrassed looking back, but when you were 13 or 14 or 15, I can make a confession that I felt. So to me, I do identify with these people who are now doing these things, because I could have become one. And that was in a way very troubling, looking back, very embarrassing, but at that time, that was the reality. I felt that all these non-believers, people like me and you, were our enemies, and all these atheists and communists and socialists and all these, they are swaying the whole humanity away from the right path, the path of God. And it was very personal. See, it was not an academic, and that's what I sometimes share with my Western friends. It is not believer or not believer, or not academic, I believe one day or don't believe. It changes your whole life, changes your whole perspective. It is in every breath, in every thought, in every action. You live it and you want to die for it. For your cause, you are not only you join the cause, you are willing to give your life for that cause, and you are willing to take the life for that. I mean, this is serious business. It is not just, it's a Holy Trinity and Jesus was right, or whether he existed or not. It is part of your core, it's part of your heart, it's part of your backbone, and you live it. So then what happened? Obviously, I took a different path. Part of that we call the secular education. So there's a religious education and there's a secular education. So colleges, universities, science, psychology, whatever. So in a way, two things. I just want to share, two personal experiences that give you from my diversion from that highway of tradition, highway of religion. I took this path. The path was, all of you might have felt that it's like you have a moment when you fall in love. There is a moment you fall out of love. So I was in love with Islam, love with God, love with this holy doctrine. Then how do you fall out of it? A small incident, sometimes a small incident. It's like when you fall in love, you see somebody, is a smile, is a twinkle in her eye. It's very simple, it's very ordinary, but it makes extraordinary because it takes that seed in your heart and then it blossoms. The fertile soil and the sunshine and the warm air, it becomes, it blossoms into a flower. So what was that seed? I was about 14 or 15, and we used to live in Peshawar outside a big mosque. It's called Eid. And twice a year people will come and pray. It was like a Christmas, it will be like midnight mass kind of a thing. But that day I saw as a teenager these hundreds of people gathering, but there was no Eid, there was no celebration. So I go to the old man, I said, Babaji, why are they praying? He said, son, there's a lot of, it's very hot, there's too much sun, there's no rain, and people are dying of heat stroke. So these people have come here to pray. They want to pray to God, it's a special prayers, and so that there is rain. Now, the first time in my life, I became a bit skeptic. I said, is it true? I didn't know the word skeptic, but I said, that is my feeling. Is it true? I didn't believe him. At some deep level, intuitively, I didn't believe him. So I go to my science teacher. And then the next day, the physics, chemistry, the science teacher, I said to him, these people were praying, they wanted to have this rain. What do you think? Because I couldn't articulate my doubt. And he said to me the first time, he said, son, it is not about miracles, it's not about prayers. Sunshine, the weather, it is about the laws of nature. The laws of nature, that all this sunshine and rain and all this is conducted through that. So we don't have to. So now I have two ideas. This science teacher says, the skepticism, this laws of nature, and this old man saying, the God is going to bring this rain. So I wait, very anxiously wait. 1 day, 2 days, 5 days, 10 days, 15 days, there is no rain. And I'm secretly happy, as if my side is winning. Because if it had would have rained, maybe my theory would have gone flat, you know. So I go back to Babaji and I say, in a way, there's a secret twinkle in my eye. I say, Babaji, there is no rain in 3 weeks. And then he said, he was very upset. He said, you know, these people, these Muslims who prayed, they were sinners. Then God don't listen to these sinners. So in a way it was kind of amusing, but that put more thought. God did not bring rain because they are sinners. So if God is this merciful, kind God, He is like a father, like a mother, then He shouldn't worry about the children. They are suffering, they are in heat. He should have sent the rain, whether they pray or not, you know. So that put the doubts in my mind, and I sort of swayed, sort of faith. Then when I was 15 or 16, my mother was a very traditional, religious, conservative mother, brings this Holy Quran, and she says, son, now you have reached puberty. Now you have to take things seriously. This is the Holy Quran and you should follow this because this is the Holy Book. Your life should be guided by this Holy Book. So now, as you know, that most of Muslims in non-Arab countries, they do not understand Arabic. So this Quran, this Holy Book, they don't understand. So I was very serious about it. I'm sharing with you that it has been very serious for me. My faith, my belief or non-belief, my philosophy has been serious for me that I follow. So I had this pillow as a teenager, put it in my living room, put the Holy Quran, the Arabic one, and then I found these different translations, interpretations of all these religious scholars, Maulana Abul Ala Maududi, Maulana Ghulam Ahmad Parvez, Maulana Mirza Ghulam Ahmad, you know, Abul Kalam Azad. Then there was also an English one, I don't know his first name, Pickthall, something Pickthall, that's the English translation of the Holy Quran. And I put all that, 5. From the first verse to the last verse, 6,666 verses. I made hundreds and hundreds of pages of notes of each verse, each idea, how these 5 scholars. And at the end of 5 years of my own personal, you know, sort of, you can call it a research, but it's not an official research, just my personal struggle. At the end of 5 years, when I'm 20, I realized that all major issues of life, 4 marriages or 1 marriage, cutting the hand, you know, stoning to, you know, of the adulterer, all that, they all disagreed. There was not a single issue on which these 5 scholars who claim to be these Muslim scholars who are expert on Arabic would have agreed. So I came to this conclusion that in 1500 years, whatever happened, this book is not book for me to follow. I cannot follow it because I don't even know. I even have this sort of a funny idea that if God had a 1-800 line, maybe I could call him and say, what is the real interpretation? But there was no 800 lines, so I just left. At that time, I think when age 20, this I wanted to show this picture of my uncle. He is no longer alive. But he was the one, and I'm saying to all of atheists and free thinkers, there's usually a person, somebody that you trust, somebody that you respect. It could be a teacher, it could be a relative, it could be, you know, somebody, a professor, that touches that. I was very close to him. He was a poet, he was a philosopher, he was a socialist, he was sort of a non-traditional. So I would go to him rather than my dad. And my dad was very generous. He said, you know, you are like your uncle, you're a poet, go to him and talk to him. So we had a meeting. At age 20, he came to our house. He took me to a Greens hotel in Peshawar and we had a heart-to-heart talk. And for the first time, now I'm saying with the book, I announced it to public. This month was my first confession to my uncle in a very private way. And I said to him, Uncle, I read this Quran, I thought about it for the last 5 years. I believe that I do not believe. See, I told him, I do not believe in God, I do not believe in Quran, I do not believe. I have realized for myself that this book is some Arab mythology, it is not facts. You know, this could be, and I still have a respect for these scriptures personally, because I think they are, I call them wisdom literature, they are folklore, and there are some good lessons in that we should learn, not completely discard them. You know, I have learned a lot from them. I don't believe in them, I don't believe they're divine revelations, but I feel in those books there are some jewels that we could in a non sort of a partisan way can accept or can learn. So I said, I respect it, but I don't want to follow it. He said, son, I have a surprise for you. I didn't know that. He said, you're a grandfather, my grandfather's brother, my uncle's uncle. He said he became an atheist when he was 60. He said, I became an atheist when I was 40, and you'll become an atheist when you're 20. You know, he said, that's the father's path. You know, now you have a mother's path, that all the religious and, you know, tradition and all that. So he gave me a advice, uncle advice. He says, sweetheart, you're living with Taliban, you're surrounded by these very religious, conservative, traditional people. Do not make it public. You'll be in big trouble. You will not finish your medical school. You might even go to jail. They might hurt you, so keep quiet. So when to talk and when not to talk. When to say and when not to say. what to write and what not to write. He helped me as a writer. He says, you have to write. If you're a good writer, you should say your truth without really stirring up that kind of a thing. Maybe in the West, because it's a secular country, we sort of get away with a lot, but when you're living in that sort of a tradition. So he said, finish your medical school, go to England or America or Canada or New Zealand and Australia, some secular country, then you can live your lifestyle, then whatever. So I took that very seriously, and I didn't say to anybody, I kept it to myself, kept on studying, So I'm just sharing with you that how that my struggle, my truth, and my uncle sort of reaffirming that helped me. So inside I felt okay, because up before that I felt I'm on the wrong track and I'm a sinner, I'm a non-believer or whatever. So I think that moral support that we need from one person or one group or one organization is very crucial, and that is why I was very excited to come here, because when you are in a minority, having people of like-minded, you feel at home, you feel sort of akin with them. It is because the religious people are very good at it, they bring in the churches and all that. We as free thinkers, we have hard time sort of communicating and sort of supporting each other. We focus more on what we disagree with each other rather than what we agree with each other. So I always follow that what we agree with each other, So let me take it to a step further. Because I was from Pakistan, so I left. I went to Iran, came to Newfoundland, to Memorial University, did my fellowship in psychiatry, started practicing psychotherapy in Whitby. Betty and I have this creative psychotherapy clinic. We had developed a secular kind of a self-help program. It's called Green Zone Living. So we help people finding their own truths, your own way of lifestyle, your own sort of way of thinking in a secular way with no sort of a religious sort of overtones to that. Unfortunately, I could say now that you see in Pakistan, in the last 40 years, as I became more and more secular humanist, Pakistan as a country, as a nation, became more and more fundamentalist. And the crucial thing in that change was this man, this army dictator. His name was Ziaul Haq. He was the one who his plane blew away in the skies. Even there was some American diplomat was with him. This man, with the power, with the political power, with the army power, he legislated, he Islamized. Unfortunately, a Pakistan that was somewhat democratic, somewhat liberal, not very atheist to secular, somewhat liberal, under his regime in one decade, Pakistan became Islamic Republic of Pakistan. I think that for people like us, that was a sad day. He legislated Sharia. He legislated rules against women, against minorities. He did, you can see, I just want one picture. See, I don't like violent pictures. That one picture, he's publicly flogging. It's not only flogging, it is publicly flogging. It's like when you go to see the hockey match. It is public, there are thousands of people watching. They want to teach them the lesson. You cannot do this and you cannot do this. So it becomes a political thing, As I said, Betty sometimes asks me why you are so passionate about it. Because it's not just about me. It is about 180 million people just in Pakistan. 1 billion people in the whole world. 1 billion is a lot of the number in the whole world who are struggling with that, and the Muslim who are struggling to follow this Sharia law, to follow this legislation. It is divine revelation, it's God's word. You need to follow that, or we should follow the secular humanist sort of a free thinking. So what does it look like? So this is our struggle, and I think that was a sad day that became in Pakistan, that has became part. And once you make that law, these blasphemy laws, it's very hard to change, it's very hard to revert, to bring it back, because people start sort of struggling. I want to sort of go quicker with you, that then I realized, that is again my personal journey. So I'm coming out of the Islam, the fold of Islam, the fold of this religious indoctrination. I'm sort of out of it. So I see now that what happened. I'm sort of old enough to see things in a historical perspective. So where did this come from? I realized my name is Khalid Sohail. This is an Arabic name. I grew up in India and Pakistan. That's part of Indian subcontinent. My name should have been Suresh Belkodi or something like that. I'm the followers of this Buddhist tradition or Guru Nanak tradition. How this Arab tradition came in. And one writer, V.S. Naipaul, wrote a book, Among the Believers. How does a religion goes to another country, another nation, how does this mentally change you? Your psyche changes. You start adoring, you start respecting, you have reverence for a tradition that is not bound to the earth. This is a heavenly God from a different culture, different language. You don't know the language, you don't know the tradition, but you want to. So this niqab and burqa, this is a Saudi tradition coming to Pakistan and other countries. This is not related. This is not from any Pakistani or Indian tradition. Women never wore this burqa, all this hijab and all this. You see these women in Pakistan, they are farmers. These women were very liberated. These women were very. It was more of a patriarchal system. These women were very liberal. These women were very outgoing. They were very confident. They were never under the thumb of men or the husband or the father. This gradually encroached in your psyche, in your social fabric, and you start thinking, feeling, internalizing. So one is internalizing as a person, and one is internalizing as a nation, as a community. You internalize these values. You see here in the natives. Natives have their own traditions. Even them, they have a concept, but they call God a great mystery. That great mystery concept is very different than this holy God who is hell and all that sort of a punishment and all that sort of a thing. So I think I realized that my tradition, Islam, had joined the other two traditions, the Middle Eastern, the Judaism and the Christianity, and so all these. So I traveled. I didn't read that much of their tradition. I traveled. I went to Israel. I saw this old Jerusalem, where the Jewish quarters and the Muslim quarters and the Christian quarters are just side by side. It is an amazing scene, and if you have not visited old Jerusalem, the history is frozen. 3,000 years, you could feel how this all thing started and how it expanded, So it went all over the world. The religious power, the economic power, and the political power, once they join hands. That happened in Pakistan with Ziaul Haq. The economic, the political power, and the religious power, they join. When they join hands, the religion is so strong, it is so empowering, it takes over your life. It sort of intimidates you, and you do not have the courage to say no. That is to me, So, because we're talking about imagine no religion, I felt, then I realized, my self-reflection, that organized religions were challenged at two levels. One from inside. That is a spiritual tradition. And many people who read my book From Islam to Secular Humanism ask me, you have written in 200 pages books, you have 50 pages about mysticism and about spirituality. Why is that? They consider the spirituality as part of the religious tradition. And I say, when you are such a strong Muslim that I was, I couldn't become an atheist straight away. You had to pass this like soft pedaling. So the spiritual tradition, the mystic tradition softens it. It says your faith is not the only faith. You respect all faiths. So this is like a stepping stone. So I call the secularism, freedom of religion. All religions. So even in Pakistan, all religions had equal. The Sunnis and the Shias and the Christians and the Jews and the Hindus have the same respect. We will be one step ahead. And then the second one is freedom from religion. That's the part 2. So I just want to show you the three pictures. Bulle Shah, from the Muslim background. Krishnamurti, he is the one who became very famous because I think in the 20th century, because a number of Western sort of Dalai Lama and all these people sort of were attached to or learned from him. Aldous Huxley. It's a very interesting. After he died, Aldous Huxley published a book about Krishnamurti. In that he has written the introduction. So Krishnamurti, before he died, came to California. Huxley and Krishnamurti used to go for a walk together. So one day he writes in his introduction, he says, I asked JD, I said, Krishnamurti, you look so peaceful, you're always so calm, you're always so relaxed. Can I have that for 5 minutes? So Krishnamurti looked at him and said, no, you will never have that. So Huxley was kind of offended because he knew that Krishnamurti was a very soft-spoken person. He would not sort of express his opinion so strongly. And he said to Krishnamurti, why do you think I will never have that peace of mind? He said, because you are full of knowledge. But that's a very interesting statement because we all perceive knowledge. We sort of want to. What he was saying was that sometimes the knowledge comes with this arrogance. I know more. And that knowledge that brings humility, that brings calmness, that brings peace is a different kind of knowledge because you are a student all your life, you're still open to learn. Then you're sure, I know it all, whichever way it is. So I think that to me, people like him paved the way. In the West, William Blake, and even Walt Whitman. You know, you read this, the leaves of grass. There's a very soft, gentle, humanistic undertone. There's spiritual overtones, but underlying, you know, he writes this poem that with this sort of war in Washington, you know, he's in a soldier's hospital, and he says, he sees that my enemy is slain, but he's as divine as I am. He's as sacred as I am. Seeing the divine spark or the humanistic spark in the enemy, that is a soft peddling of a humanistic philosophy. I think that the ones that you know that are more the scientific tradition, that is more in the West. And I think the biologists, the psychologists, the sociologists. So I will go quickly through these 3-4 slides because you people are very well aware of that, very familiar with that. But I want to add a touch. Now, we all talk about the origin of species. I want to make a comment here that although I'm a non-believer and I'm an atheist, but there are Muslims. So in the Muslim fold, there are two kinds of groups. One group does believe in origin of species, does believe in evolution, does believe, they even give you some Quranic verses that might support that, while others are completely against. So in a way, when we're working with them, we welcome them. They are sort of, you know, they are halfway there. They're open for a dialogue. So all I'm saying is, because you people have, you know, in the West, this creationist and evolutionist is a big, hot debate. There is a different kind of debate in the Muslim world. So I'm giving that touch, that for the Muslim world, that people who do, there are people like Ghulam Ahmad Parvez, there are some philosopher Muslim scholars. There was a guy, Sir Syed Ahmad Khan in India. He promoted science. But although he was a long beard, he was considered a Maulana, but he was in favor of science, in favor of psychology, philosophy. They branded him, didn't call him atheist, they called him naturey, that he believes in nature. You know, he was sort of a branded, but he struggled. So some of these Muslim scholars do struggle. They sort of paved the way for that open dialogue, and I welcome them, I have a dialogue with them. The same way, I think, from the Freud, the origin, the sort of interpretation of dreams. I did go to Vienna, I visited his clinic because being a psychiatrist, I was curious. Just tell you one thing, you know, Sigmund Freud also, like many of these people, are sort of a misrepresentative. One thing, if we sort of a value, he said, you can, because we are rational people. Freud said that you can only be rational when you are emotionally mature. It's very interesting. Rationality and emotional maturity is very linked. Socrates said human beings are rational beings. Freud said if you have emotional problems, if you are emotionally distressed, disturbed, then you are not a rational being, you become a rationalizing being. Which means that you have an emotional reaction and then you rationalize. You use reason to justify something that is emotionally charged and it may not be right. So to separate the rational being from the rationalizing being is one gift that Freud gave us. The same way, the Das Kapital, the Marxist revolution, in Pakistan, in India, there are many Marxists. But unfortunately, they lost the battle in India and Pakistan because many of them became very angry. There was very angry Marxists in Pakistan. As if they were not from fundamentalist religious people, they became like fundamentalist Marxist communists. And people started to walk away from them. Their message was not gentle. It was very, we want to bring the revolution. It was so harsh, people could not digest it. So I am sort of sharing with you that how in the Muslim world these messages have gone, Darwin's, Freud's, Jung's, even the fourth one is the Sartre. They're very cynical. Pakistanis are very cynical about Sartre because they associate his existentialism with atheism. So they think if you're existentialist, that means you're a non-believer. So there are these tones, there are these perceptions, social perceptions that I don't think are real. They have not read the original documents, but they have created their own perception of that. And we fight that. We try to clarify, to say, no, this is not what Sartre said. This is not what Marx or Freud or, So I'm just sharing with you that in the Muslim world, there is a different kind of debate that is not in the West. Let me compare one thing. In the Christian world, finally, this whole 200 years of biologists, psychologists, sociologists, anthropologists, existentialists brought into the forefront. And if you use the symbol was Nietzsche, the symbol was Thus Spoke Zarathustra, and that he declares. I brought this slide to show you that inside it says God is dead, Nietzsche, and then it says Nietzsche is dead. God. Because that's an interesting document. That the people inside the Christian world are very angry with Nietzsche. And unfortunately, because I'm a psychiatrist, Nietzsche at the last 10 years did lose his sort of a mental balance, and he was in a psychiatric asylum for the last 10 years. He was not very, because, and again, taking that chair. I think he was a great, sort of a great brave man, and some of the people from the Muslim world were very brave, but it's very hard. If you do not have that support that you people have, people can lose. They may be on the right track, but they're not emotionally that strong to take the whole world, and they lose their mind. They have a nervous breakdown because it is not an easy battle to fight, So I'm lucky, and I think you're lucky. We're all sitting here, and we are sort of emotionally stable and enjoying life, but there are many who have fallen. Many people who have landed up in the hospitals, have suicided, have taken drugs, have gone on that because they could not handle that conflict, that tension. It was that sort of a strong. Octavio Paz, the Mexican sort of a philosopher, he compares the difference between the Muslim and the Christian. So let me, you can read it there. I brought this just to read it to you. He compares the Christian with the Muslim world. He says Islam has experienced difficulties similar to those Christianity has undergone, finding it impossible to discover any rational or philosophical ground on behalf for belief in a single God. Abu Hamid Ghazali writes his incoherence of philosophy. A century later, Averroes answers with his incoherence of incoherence. For Muslims too, the battle between God and philosophy was a fight to the death. In this instant, God won, and a Muslim Nietzsche might have written, philosophy is dead, we all killed it together, you killed it, and I killed it. That is an alternative current in 1967. I just want to show you that this is a very serious sort of a battle that took place. And what you see now in the Muslim world, this Ghazali, it's almost 1,000 years. 1,000 years ago, in the final battle between reason and revelation, Ghazali promoted that revelation should win. If there's a conflict between mathematics, and Quran or scriptures, we should take Quran, we should take scriptures. This was a very serious sort of a debate. And in the last 1,000 years in the Muslim world, other than a few exceptions, as I said, this Sayyid Ahmad Khan, now there are people in Pakistan like Parvez Hudbai, the scientist, who are fighting those battles as a scientist. He wrote a book, Islam and Science, a very wonderful book that even translated into Urdu. He's a good friend. We worry about him. He's still in Pakistan and he might get hurt or things like that, but he stays there and he fights that on the frontier. So I just wanted to show you in 1,000 years, now finally some of the Muslim scholars, philosophers are feeling the courage to stand up and say, listen, rationality, secularism, humanism is worth pursuing, and we should follow that. Let me go a step further. Paul Sayunga, this Nigerian sort of a writer, he shows how Christianity and Islam affected the African world. We were so talking about Asia, the Middle East, the North America. How does it affect the Africa? Taken together, therefore, the history of African people provides us with two principal enemies of their authentic traditions and their will to cultural identity. One is European imperialism, the other Arab Islamic penetration and domination of significant areas of the continent. Let me read it to you. Freedom remains the antithesis of power, but historically proven corollary to enslavement. Obviously, power can only be made manifest with the act of enslavement of some other. What then of the third world, captive and client of the two ideological states, socialism and capitalism? Even it has been and still holds itself in thrall of two other alien contending religions, Christianity and Islam. Both these religions in their turn operate globally in mind-boggling, fluctuating alliances with the two main ideological scaffoldings, left and right, yet constantly strike out in their specific authoritarianism, often of the most destructive anti-humanist nature. You can see he uses the word anti-humanist nature, that how these ideologies. So to me, my understanding now, it is not just a religious ideology, any ideology, when it becomes so sacred, whether it's communism or any other ideology, when it takes that step that human beings are subservient to these ideologies, we have a problem. So as a humanist, I believe that human beings are more important, they are the center. We need any idea, any philosophy that supports humanism, we support them. Any ideology that goes against that, we have some conflict. I just wanted to show you how the Middle Eastern, these three traditional religions and the economic powers have joined hands, the political, economic and the religious power, and how they operate. It's very mind-boggling and most people do not really understand. Now let me come finally to our atheists, because obviously we imagine no religion. What is happening with this struggle of these psychologists, sociologists? The number is increasing. Not only the number of people who are openly declaring, I want to make it very clear, I know in the Muslim world there's a big number who are not open to say publicly on the forum that I'm an atheist, I'm a humanist. They still continue. I was talking to some friends yesterday, and many of them use these euphemisms. They say, I'm a secular Muslim, I'm a cultural Muslim. They do not want to say I'm an atheist. And many of the people I know, they are deeply on the atheist, but they would not come out and say. So the number is increasing, 1%, 15%. Our friend from CFI said it's 24% in Canada. I thought it was 20%. Scandinavian countries have obviously far more. This whole process, to me, comes up with this final question that I want to share, that what role religion has been playing. Until we understand psychologically and socially what role has been playing, it will be hard for us to say, imagine no religion. I want to give two examples, one cultural and one personal. The cultural is Mao Zedong, who was obviously a Maoist. We had our political differences with that guy because he had his own ideology, but in some way he said something that are worth seeing, worth pursuing. He said that China is like an old man who has a bag of problems on his head and a cane of religion in his hand. If we ask him to leave the cane, he is afraid he will not leave it because he's going to fall flat on his face. But if we take the problem of social economic problems, people have food, people have healthcare, people have education, people have roof over their head. If they have those basic problems, then their need to rely on religion, especially when they're in a crisis, will be less. So that's an indirect way. I use it in my psychotherapy. People who come who have drug addiction, alcohol, drugs, cocaine and all that, they're using that as a crutch. I say to them, you want to get rid of that. I can say, oh, stop drinking, stop smoking, stop doing that. He knows intellectually, he knows that smoking is not good for him, but he cannot emotionally get rid of that. I tell him an example of a woman, a beautiful woman with tattered clothes. If I ask her to take off those clothes, he will not do that because she doesn't want to be naked. But if I give him a beautiful dress as a gift, to wear that gift, she will get rid of those tattered clothes, that rags, take a shower and wear that. So to me, I feel as a secular humanist, it is my personal and our collective responsibility to give the world, to give the humanity those gifts. So what are those gifts? Those are intellectual gift, social gift, ethical gift. These are the gifts. Last year I was in a Humanist Association of Toronto. There was a young woman, she said to me, Dr. Sohail, you are a non-believer, I am a Christian, I just came for the first time to a humanist seminar. You tell me, you do not believe in Bible, you don't believe in Quran, you do not believe in Gita, you do not believe in Old Testament. Where does your ethical values come from? What do you follow? I said to her, this is a very important question. I gave her a small answer of my personal and collective conscience, that we as human beings has evolved to have certain conscience, but I want to share that with you. This is my last sort of a comment, that we as humanists need to pursue that there were secular ethics in the world, in the history, that many traditional religions have taken over. They support, or they think that they have promoted that, and we as humanists, atheists and secularists and humanists have stolen from them. I have an opposite argument, an opposite point of view. I give you three examples of Confucius from China. Don't do unto others what you don't want to be done unto you. In the Christian and whatever they say, do unto others what you want to be done to you. That's a golden rule. But he was sort of a humanist. Confucius did not promote God and life after death, but he shared that. So the Confucius rule, golden rule, has been taken over, and most people don't know that Confucius shared that. Buddha, some people obviously think that about him as a religious leader, but my understanding of Buddha was that he did not promote any heavenly God and all that stuff. I just want to quote you one example of a saying: believe nothing just because a so-called wise man said it. Believe nothing just because a belief is generally held. Believe nothing just because it is said in ancient books. Believe nothing just because it is said to be of divine origin. Believe nothing just because someone else believes it. Believe only what you yourself test and judge to be true. One's own experience is the best teacher. This is to me the essence that what I understood. So I think he in India, Confucius in China, Buddha in India. Hippocrates, the father of secular medicine. Hippocrates says, don't pray. When people were sick, don't have to follow on prayers and all that magical thing. Your health is related to your nutrition, your sleep, your exercise, the physical reasons for physical causes. So Hippocrates introduced the secular medicine. Even now, till now, the doctors talk about Hippocratic oath, that even we say that if you cannot help the patient, don't hurt the patient. I'm one of the psychiatrists, I don't use very many medications. You know, I use more psychotherapy, but even medication, when the new medication comes, I wait for 5 years. Like Prozac came, I didn't prescribe for 5 years, and we found out that many people with Prozac had committed suicide and all. There are some side effects that you don't know. So I have to be very careful, very cautious of prescribing medications that you are helping the patients, you're not hurting the patient. That was Hippocrates' gift to humanity. Socrates, I think you all people know, for my sort of curiosity of Socrates was that a life unexamined is not worth living. So this examination, self-introspection is, you see, you don't make the whole nation atheist, one person at a time, a free thinker who goes on that path of self-reflection, introspection, finally leads there. In the modern world, it was Abraham Maslow who took the spirituality on. Spirituality is traditionally connected with religion and God and all that. He was the first one who gave a new name, peak experiences, that you do not need to be a believer to have these spiritual experiences. So in a way, spirituality is part of humanity, not divinity. This is the forum, this is what I write, and so I think some of my articles I gave, there was a friend, Sandhu Binning, who came to Whitby with his wife. I gave him an article I wrote. I sometimes write on Secular Web, the internet magazine Secular Web. Some of my articles are there, and I wrote one that how the secular ethics of 7 humanist philosophers gave to the world that tradition. The political gift that I think the secular humanist can offer is how a society can be based on secular values, humanistic values, so that we do not go to the theocratic state where all people, all citizens, especially women, especially minorities, have the same rights as the majority. So at the end, I say my vision is secular ideas and humanistic ideals, so that we can all create a just and a peaceful world, and invite, I think those believers, what I'm saying to you, those believers have a soft corner with an open heart. Some of them are willing to have a dialogue with us. So I do not reject them just because he's a believer. I welcome it. You respect my truth, I respect your truth, and I find it very fruitful, especially in the Muslim world, to open that dialogue. And I've been doing that, and with little progress, but I feel very proud, and I really want to thank you for giving me that time and listening to my, whatever I have to say. I feel very passionate about this, and I feel very excited, and I want to thank Bill and Kathy for especially inviting me for this forum. Thank you very much.